It's every pet owner's worst nightmare. You leave your dogs with someone you trust, believing they're going to look after them, and instead they deliberately and cruelly end their lives. This is what happened to Morgan Glenn when she left her beloved Huskies, Pneuma Paisley and Melo J, in the care of someone she had trusted with them before. It is only through doing her own investigation that Morgan discovered that not only was this person not even present in the home where the dogs were being looked after, Melo and Pneuma had been kept in a cage without food or water until they starved to death. 4 staff members from Inner Knowing Canine Connections, including owner Tiffany Jourdain, have been charged with cruelty, felony conspiracy, with details of the lies, deception and cover-up still emerging. So why had you chosen Inner Knowing Canine Connections in the first place?
So I originally found them in 2023, and Melo at the time was still in his first year of life. So I was really looking for an intentional boarding and training facility. And I didn't really want to go to like a massive facility. So this was an in-home program. And to my knowledge, it was going to be maximum like 5 to 6 dogs at a time. And it was someone's personal home. And so the way that it was set up is set up very similarly to my own home. And so even like the layout of the house itself. So I just felt really comfortable with that setup in the first place. But when I did like the property tour and the meet and greet, I felt really at like ease with just the environment. And then the intentional attention and care that they were supposed to be getting every time soothed my own anxieties. Because I always been that like helicopter dog mom, you know. I work from home, and so I spend 24/7 with them on a daily basis. And I don't know, that kind of increased my anxiety leaving them for any length of time because I nor them are used to that. So I just felt really good about the setup and the promises and the guarantees and all of that that were kind of handed.
Yeah, because it's not like you just sort of drove up and dropped them off. You'd been and you'd met the owner and you'd toured everything, and you were there to make sure that you felt comfortable.
Right. And I really appreciate when dog or like pet care individuals of any kind do a meet and greet before any type of service, because I think it's a big deal for an owner to be able to place their animals with a person, but also be sure everyone's going to get along during this. So.
And I mean, it is the scariest thing you ever have to do is hand your pet's care off to somebody else. And I know that, there's many instances where they traveled with you, but that can't always happen, and that's why boarding facilities exist. And I know that things can go wrong, that accidents happen, but that's not what happened here.
Oh, absolutely not.
When did you first know something wasn't right?
So I found out on their 10th day, which was the day before I was flying home, but because of the time I was going to be landing and everything, I had to wait until the next day to grab them.
Right. And they had stayed there before?
Yes. And each of their stays was around the same amount of time, anywhere from 10 to 14 days.
Yeah, so it's not a massively long stay for them at all, yeah.
No, yeah. The only indication I had the entire time was the voicemail that I received. It was my final night overseas. And I got a voicemail letting me know that there was a massive emergency with both of my dogs, and they were on their way to the emergency vet. And, I guess at that point I did start to panic. I don't guess that I did. I definitely started to panic, but I also started to ask a lot of questions internally because, Melo was 3 and Pneuma was almost 10. And so for something to happen to both of them to be in an emergency, it would have to be like an extreme accident or something else. So I just didn't really know what to think from that point. But yeah, before that, everything that I was getting, like I got photos and updates and everything was fine. And
and you were getting updates from Tiffany, who is the owner, from her phone with photos throughout the day, and she wasn't even there.
Yes, I didn't find that out until the day after I got home and started to go and visit everywhere and try to put the pieces together. I didn't find out that she wasn't there until then.
So what was their explanation, from their initial explanation?
Basically, the way that it was set up was Tiffany Jourdain is the business owner, and then Brianne Hunt is her manager, and then Lillian Sparks is what they are claiming is a training assistant. And so she is the one that was there the entire time with all of the animals. And basically, Bree and Tiffany, because they weren't there, were just trying to pit everything on Lily. But she was no longer employed there by the time I started to, do my own investigation. And so they just continued to stick to the same story that I was told on the voicemail, which is, Melo and Pneuma were fine Sunday morning. Neither of them wanted to eat, but they were otherwise fine. And when Lily had come back to the property, Melo was actively seizing and then collapsed, and Pneuma was just extremely lethargic. So they just continued to give me that story and no further details. The only reason I found out that they weren't being fed was because of the necropsy results that I got back. That wasn't even something that Tiffany or Bree were really addressing with me whatsoever.
No. And did the vet find, was there anything else in their findings? Was, that was suspicious, or was it purely just the fact that they were both emaciated and dehydrated?
Well, the most alarming thing was Melo, they weren't even able to run a necropsy on him because of the state of decomposition he was already in. And that was I found that out pretty quickly. That, made me have a lot more questions, because the story I was being told was that he was alive and well Sunday morning. And then how could, by the time he was at the lab Sunday night, he's already in a state of decomposition so far that he couldn't even have a necropsy done. And so there weren't any findings other than their stomachs were empty. They were obviously dehydrated, but there was no oh, this is what happened.
There was no something like trauma. It was purely they had just been left to, Yeah.
And I had also found out through the animal control sheriff's department individuals that were investigating that they actually were kept in an outdoor shed type building, which I didn't even know existed, And when I went and picked up their belongings, they showed me a bedroom inside of the house, which is where I was told they were staying. And so I think it's kind of the starvation, dehydration, and then paired with being in a likely not well ventilated and temperature controlled environment. And they're Siberian Huskies, heat is a really big factor. So I think it just sped everything up. But
because there were other animals as well that were, well, in some way luckier in that they did survive, but in similar kind of conditions. Is that right?
Yes, I'm not sure how many were affected. I know there were about 20 dogs throughout their entire stay that were there for at least parts of it. And then there are all kinds of other animals, which I didn't know any of that. I thought it was only dogs, but there were sheep and rodents and ducks and just all kinds of animals that were also affected.
Yeah. And so is the suspicion that this, Lily Sparks just walked away and just didn't do anything? Do they have any idea what she actually did? Well, we know what she didn't do, but was it a planned thing, or did she just walk away and just didn't care?
I'm not sure. That's the stuff I'm not getting any answers around that at this point. And hopefully as the investigation moves on, I will receive more and more information about that. But obviously she wasn't feeding or giving water. I don't know if that means she just wasn't at the property or if she was making intentional choice. I think it's always an intentional choice to withhold food and, basic survival needs.
If you do it, if it's because she did nothing, it's because she chose to do nothing.
Right. But there's also been so many people come forward, even just to talk to me about their own experiences with Tiffany at this place, but also her other place of business in Florida, where they picked up their dogs and they were obviously malnourished or emaciated. And so it's also just kind of coming to light that this seems to be a trend of business for her, which I had never experienced in the past.
But everything, before that, says this is a really positive place. They had great reviews. It's scary. It is really scary.
For sure. And I think, I've talked to several people from 2-ish years ago. I think that's as far back as I've gotten, where they also experienced bad things, but the staff has been very skilled at making it feel like an owner issue instead of a widespread issue, which I think is an important thing to note in the animal world, because when you're an intentional pet owner and something goes wrong, if the professional at play is able to make it feel like it's your fault, I think we are very quick to like assume that it is something we're doing and then try to do better ourselves instead of, doing a lot of reflection, because also you should be able to trust these people that they're telling you the truth. And
yeah,
that's not always the case, but
I think that brings us to something that I think your message is really important for people to, if it's sort of like the see something, say something. If you have a bad experience, especially when it comes to something as important as pet care, say something. Write the review. I know there's plenty of people out there who love writing negative reviews about the most ridiculous things,
right.
but this is something that's important because people rely on those reviews. People like you see those reviews and go, well, this sounds great.
Yeah, I think even for, employees of places and people who have maybe not an entirely negative experience somewhere, but, there are questions or red flags, there's a duty that we all carry. And it is so important when we're dealing with pets or children who like are defenseless, they don't have a voice. We have to be their voice. And so we do have a duty to one another to protect all of us and all of our animals, to ask questions of these people, but then also if it's, warranted, to write a review, just hey, this is my authentic, genuine experience. I don't know, even if it's like a question, it's still important to voice so that we can make informed decisions, because you're relying on that. It's such a important way. Yeah.
And it's important as well, I think, for those businesses that are doing a great job, but then for people to be able to see that difference and say, okay, well, yeah, they're not all like this. This isn't likely to happen to my pet, but we've got to expose the risks if they're there. I would always rather err on the side of caution, as any kind of pet owner is going to want to do.
Right. And I think that's another important thing. I've tried to steer away from scaring everyone from using any kind of pet sitter, because, it's not realistic that we can just never leave our pets.
Absolutely.
Not
and people shouldn't be made to feel guilty for using these services. Like these services are there for a reason, and they're usually, run by people who love working with animals.
Right.
But I think, you do get a lot of these people saying, oh, I would just never leave my pets. It's like, well, some of us have to live in the real world.
Right. And sometimes, like, what if you have to go to the hospital or, like an emergency of your own? In that situation, it's better to have experience somewhere with someone that could watch your pets. But I don't want to scare anyone, even though, like, moving forward, if I were to get another dog, like, I'm going to have a lot of anxiety ever leaving. But I think there are so many beautiful people in the pet care world that I don't ever want to like shut everyone down, but Absolutely. There's a balance between, well, what regulations and inspections and stuff, what are we missing to prevent this from happening? But also, like, how do we continue using services with like a necessary amount of trust and transparency?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you get things, I'm not sure in the US, like in the UK here, you get things like Trust a Trader, where you can register on these sites where you have to pass certain checklists and tests and things like that to be on this list of, a trusted business. And I mean, boarding facilities should be, we perhaps need something like that, so that there is some sort of a national database of these kennels have been vetted and checked and have X number of positive reviews to be part of this group. I think would be a really positive idea.
Right. Yeah. That's an excellent idea.
And
even sporadic inspections, where it's
Absolutely.
Your cards can't be up, and this is an authentic look at what clients are receiving on any given day.
Yes. And that's something, and I don't know how many kennels and boarding facilities do this. The one that I worked at, this is going back more than a decade, of course, they had obviously times where you could pick up and drop off, but they also had opening hours that any prospective, clients could turn up at any point to check out the facilities. And I think that's that shows transparency.
Absolutely.
Because if you give someone even an hour's notice that you're going to come and have a look, that's time enough for them to to make everything look great.
Right.
So I think that's probably is a good tip for people, is look for a kennel that is happy for you to turn up unannounced, so that you can have a look at the place, because you should be able to generally have a look at these facilities and be comfortable with, okay, that's how it looks at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. great. You know, that should be something that any owner should be able to do.
Absolutely, which I know gets a little tricky when it's services like Rover. I'm not sure if that's a thing over there, but it's like an app or a website. It's basically, it's kind of like Airbnb, but for pet care.
Yeah.
And so
Okay.
you can search for people to stay in your home or for them to stay in their home and all of that, which Tiffany Jourdain was also on that platform. And so it gets a little tricky when it's someone's home that you're going to.
Well, yes,
you know,
that makes it a bit difficult. Yeah.
and I think that is kind of a distinction that I would like to make on my story. You know, all the news stories say kennel, and so people are imagining this is a big facility, but this is someone's home. Yeah. I had no idea that there was a large building with 20 to 50 crates stuffed in it. Like, that's just not in my mind what service I was getting. And so
I mean, you know, obviously we don't know for certain what happened the previous visits, but it almost sounds like you were shown the front of shop.
For sure.
I know they've been charged. Are they likely to get custodial sentences? Do you know any of what's planned?
Not really. There was a court date which was supposed to be the disposition hearing, which is kind of when you hear about, are we doing plea deals? Are we moving into a public trial? That kind of thing. But they asked for a continuance. So the next one will be in July. And that's when I guess that conversation will actually happen. I definitely have my hopes of what will happen. I believe they all should move to public trial, but the animal cruelty laws in North Carolina are extremely weak. And so, you know,
they're largely just they're not good enough in a lot of places in the world, you know.
I'd say it's a wide issue for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is just another example of the laws need to be clearer and harsher. Because, I mean, I know people say, oh, if you're cruel to an animal, you'll be cruel to a person. It's like, whatever. If you're cruel to an animal, there's something wrong. There is something seriously wrong for you to do that. And we can't just let that go.
Right. And there is so much research out there that's public knowledge, you know, of that is a clear distinction that research shows. You know, animal cruelty is almost never its own issue. It almost always is a indicator of bigger issues. And so, but I'm with you, like, even if it's not, it's never okay. You know,
it should just be enough that it's animal cruelty. End of. It's not okay.
And we're in such an old way of thinking. I think our laws are still in the old way of thinking, but now pets are family members to almost everyone that has them, you know, and it's not the same as personal property because, you know, my couch is personal property or my car is personal property, but my dogs were my everything. They were my family. They were here every day. Like, it's just past time for us to change laws around all of that to actually reflect the heart of pet ownership. Yeah.
100%.
My heart obviously is I want to protect anyone else ever from having to walk through what I'm having to walk through, but I also want there to be public knowledge so that if someone else does have to walk through this, that there's a clear path to take kind of thing. But the biggest thing is, you know, no pet owner is alone. As isolating as it has felt to be in this experience, even I am not alone. And so I think it's just been such a beautiful, even though it's been so tragic, it's been such a beautiful experience for community to come together. And it's not just, you know, community around me. I'm experiencing worldwide community of pet owners, you know, supporting me and sending me encouragement, sending me memorial gifts, sending the DA letters, you know, asking for justice, that kind of thing. I think that is such an important piece of pet ownership as well, you know, remembering that we're all in this together. And so many of us, I'd say the majority of us have that same heart of loving our pets in such a way. We also love each other in such a way. And I don't ever want that to get lost or in danger, you know?
Yeah. And I think it certainly has shown that, I mean, we've got people who can be capable of horrible things and people who can sit behind their computer screens and say horrible things. But on the balance, I think the majority are, you know, we see a lot of negative, but it's so vastly outweighed by kindness.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah. And kindness is never small. There's no small act of kindness. And I'm just reminded of that daily, you know, because people will say like, this isn't much, but to me, it feels like everything right now. And so, I think as I'm experiencing, you know, just the most cruel and grotesque pictures of humanity,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I'm experiencing the most beautiful and kind picture of humanity. And that's such a gift. So yeah.
And if anybody is wanting to reach out, what's the best way to get in touch if people are wanting to give you any information or to get in touch about the case?
If you're trying to reach me, you can certainly send me an Instagram message, but I will say those are a little bit wild right now. So email is definitely the best avenue to go. And you can just send it to morgan@moonshineceramics.com. Or if you have specific leads on the case, you can contact the Buncombe County Sheriff's Department directly, and they're kind of funneling all of the leads and evidence and all of that to where they need to be. So
I'll make sure there's the links are down below for anybody who needs to get onto those. Morgan, thank you so much for talking with me. I really appreciate you sharing your experience, and just so sorry that it happened to you. But I think it's just, it's a story that a lot of people, need to hear.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you for your time. Look, take care. And look, I hope that you do open your heart to some new doggos soon, because it's horrible being without them.
Yes, for sure.